Hey guys, this is Dr. Colin Zhu, and thank you so much for being here with us on the Thrive Bites podcast. This is season 4, and we're so excited for you to be here. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Dr. Colin Zhu, double boarded in family and lifestyle medicine, and I interview the best and most passionate health and wellness experts of the industry on this platform. And we talk about plant-powered living, emotional resilience, and creating a thriving mindset. And this season, we're taking it live, we're taking it on multiple platforms, and we're taking it as a Q&A discussion as well as our interviewing of our guests. So we're super stoked about this, and please remember to like and subscribe down below, and we will see you. Welcome to the next episode. All right, welcome everyone to the Thrive Bites podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Colin Zhu, and thank you so much for being here with us. You can be anywhere in the world, and I am super stoked for you just to spend a few moments with us today. And today is a very fabulous episode. It's a great love of mine because, it's basically what we're doing, and that's creating a podcast, right? For this episode, I'm with really, really, really awesome, colleagues and friends and experts in their respective areas. And, I'm going to introduce them. So first off, ladies first, we have Maya Acosta. She is the co-leader of Plant-Based DFW, that's Dallas Fort Worth, Plant Pure Communities, and that's located in Dallas, Texas. For years, she's been passionate. Maya's been passionate about helping people every day and helping them understand that they have the power to upgrade their health. I love that. Her outreach program was first began by her husband's vascular center. And Dr. Riz Bukhari is a vascular surgeon, and he's also the co-leader of the pod as well. And together they have formed this organization, Plant-Based DFW, and became pod leaders. Prior to COVID-19, they would hold 2 to 3 monthly events for the community, and that consisted of guest lectures, plant-based potlucks, documentary screenings, and walk with the doc programs. So that's amazing work what they do for community leading. And during the pandemic, Maya began outreaching to their pod, to their greater audience via their Plant-Based DFW podcast. And she's hosted so many physicians, dietitians, health coaches, chefs, to really talk about the benefits of consuming a plant-based diet. And she's also invited everyday people to share their testimonials on how that has halted and in some cases reversed chronic disease. And today, Maya creates content for their YouTube channel as another way to share their information. And a little bit more about Dr. Bukhari. He's a board certified vascular surgeon, treats a variety of vascular issues, including aneurysms, carotid artery stenosis, lower extremity arterial blockages, gangrene, dialysis, access grafts. Riz, how long are we supposed to go with this? I'm kidding. And he has seen the ravaging effects of poor lifestyle choices on his patients' health. So he is a champion, for his community, and I cannot wait to have them both on. So please welcome Maya and Dr. Riz. Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Colin. Hi, Dr. Zhu. How are you? Thank you for having us on.
Oh man, I am super, super, super stoked. And thank you so much for joining and taking the time out. I know Riz just literally, jettisoned his way into the studio. So thank you so much for spending the time for this conversation.
Yes, thank you for having us. And you're right. It's amazing that Dr. Riz makes himself available to podcasts on top of everything else that he does on a regular basis. So he stays pretty busy.
Yes.
It's by design. It keeps me out of trouble.
It's like if I'm not doing surgery, I'm definitely gonna be in trouble somewhere. So this is a great topic, how to start your own very first podcast. And, between the both of us, we have concentrated, in the health and wellness space, right? But I think audiences that are listening in, that are interested can apply the same concepts, techniques to create different kind of categories as well. I truly believe that as well. So my first question to you guys is the origin story. how did that, concept of creating your own podcast, come about? What was your experience with podcasting in terms of, listening, as a, avid, consumer? Did you have any experience in the podcasting world? So please share with us your origin story.
So I think Maya should take this one because this was her idea and her passion from the beginning. So I'll let her tell you where it came from.
Okay. So basically, it was, as you know, we became plant based at a certain point in our lives. And then the more that we read and learned about how people can actually take control of their own health and prevent disease, and in some cases, reverse or halt conditions, when we learned that we can inform people this way, it just seemed obvious to me that, well, podcasting is a thing that's developing, it's happening, that this is another platform that we can use to help share the information. I do want to add, though, that in terms of my own self, like many, many years ago, I used to tune in to a couple of shows. Back then, they weren't called podcasts, as you know, they were called talk radio. But I used to listen to a show called Coast to Coast that would cover all kinds of topics, including the paranormal and other things like that. But that is where I got a lot of my health information, believe it or not, because they would have the guests would have certain the host would have certain guests that could come on and talk about things like hypothyroidism and mercury poisoning. And so from there, and that was years ago, from there, I started doing my own research. And it never left my mind that I obtained so much information by listening to this show. And that's kind of like how I saw the ability to share information for people who, are at home or they're driving or just doing something where they can listen as well. It just seemed like a perfect thing to do. And then, of course, Riz, having so much to share about the work that he does, I felt like we could work together as a team and to help inform the public.
Awesome. Yeah, it's Riz, did you have anything to add to that?
Well, so that was her concept, and I didn't know if you wanted to know then, how did we start, putting everything together and then do our first episode?
Yeah. So, so I think, the follow question to that is, when the beginnings of the podcast, like, how did you start? Did you, write things down? Did you talk about it? Why did you, do it together as opposed to separately? Like, how did the beginning workings come about for you guys?
Well, the year was 2018.
So long ago.
Not that long ago, actually.
It was pre-COVID. Is the way I look at it, as pre-COVID and post-COVID.
Right.
Yeah.
Riz was at a time in his life in 2018 where he had built up the practice enough to where he could, start taking longer breaks. And we were in Florida. So we were visiting Florida a lot. We have a sailboat there, And so the idea was that because we spent a lot of time in Florida, from like Fort Lauderdale down to Miami with our sailboat, we would stop in frequent places that were fully plant-based, vegan, and we learned about the communities there. And so my idea was, okay, well, we are spending more time, vacationing a little bit longer. We're making connections. Why not interview some of those people along the way? I even thought that our sailboat would be a perfect place inside our sailboat to bring people on board and interview them, because it's just nicely buffered in the cabin. But so that was the idea. And our first episode was actually recorded in Annapolis. The last day of the boat show, with our basic setup, and I'll talk more about what that setup was, but a basic setup in the hotel room without really a table or adequate lighting, we recorded our first episode. And it was really botched in the sense that it was really, you can hear me on the right ear, you can hear Dr. Riz in the left ear. It was just crazy. But when I look back at the episode, that was a lot of fun. And then, so that was our first episode. And then the second episode was someone who I contacted ahead of time in Annapolis. And I learned about her story. She had authored a cookbook. She had a juice store or shop. Yeah. with healthy options. And so I reached out and I said, we're going to be in town. I would love to interview you. Can we interview you in your store? And so she loved the whole idea. We set it up. And so that was the beginning of my really feeling like this is going to be a lot of fun. We can pair our traveling with sort of advocacy work. In other words, like we're featuring people wherever we go that are part of the movement that we believe in.
So yeah, and so that kind of speaks to me that the thing you podcast about is finding your niche and then something that you're passionate about, and that makes it easier for you to do. It's hard work, but it gives you something to pursue, a passion to go after. And so it was this thing about healthcare and nutrition, and then later on incorporating lifestyle as well. As we learn, as we evolved and learned more, we evolved the channel as well.
Yeah, so that's you're absolutely right. It is a lot of work, and for me, I haven't even listened to a podcast episode before I started, and for me, I just kind of stumbled upon it. I needed another way to record an audiobook, and I ended up finding a DIY app on how to do your own podcast, and the rest was history. And as you said, it's a lot of work. So what was the what got you motivated? What told you, what, I don't really know, as much as I thought there's a lot of work, a lot of stuff to handle, right? But what kept you going to, where you are? Because I think you've produced over 100 episodes, right?
Yes, 137 or something. But well, there was one time that we collaborated, and I want to share this part about when we went to Los Cabos. I think that was in 2019. And I had already started this idea that whenever we travel, we want to connect with vegans and people that are plant-based, just anywhere we go. And so we knew that we were going to travel as a family with Riz and his girls to Los Cabos. That was I think in 2019. And so I reached out on Facebook, not knowing anyone, and said, is there a vegan movement? Are there vegan restaurants? We're plant-based. Would you be interested in hearing a vascular surgeon give a lecture? And it was amazing, Dr. Zhu. Absolutely amazing. Like within a week, everything was taken care of. We had the location where we were going to speak, all the advertisements, everything was done. And we knew we were going to fill the room, the space. That of connecting with people outside of our own little community, and really collaborating, because it was a true collaboration in Los Cabos. Till this day, we have listeners from Mexico because of that. So that was part of what kept me going. It's like whenever we travel, we went to San Diego, we interviewed a physician out there. Anywhere we wanted to go, we went to DC for the PCRM summit, and we interviewed someone who was featured in a documentary. And so that is kind of like what kept me on fire about connecting with real people who are creating change. And then, of course, the opportunities that Riz has been on, it's all about sharing what he sees on a daily basis and how he can empower people by sharing this message that they can prevent disease and other, make lifestyle changes.
Yeah, and for me, I like what she said, because we enjoy connecting with people in different communities where we go, and then at the same time, we get to interview people. But for me too, it was this idea of sharing this information, which I'm so passionate about, where I can help people more than just on a one-on-one basis. We can reach more people this way, and educate them and help them learn how to live a healthier lifestyle.
Yeah, I mean that's amazing, especially pre-COVID. It's I'm actually jealous that's amazing, because you realize that, and I think that's one of the positive things about Facebook is the fact that these groups have already been established, and if you have enough friends and following, you could just be like, hey, I'm actually going to be coming into town. Is there anyone out there that's willing to do X, Y, and Z? And I think that's a very powerful, way of not only bridging the gap, but also, outreaching. You're talking about advocacy, and you're also, collaborating and cross promoting, and suddenly your community, widens. And I think that's a very powerful, motivator. So I think, for you guys, that's amazing. It's the power of community.
Mm-hmm. And if I can also add, in terms of what kept us going, I didn't know any podcasters, obviously, when we first started, but then I learned about, for example, Chuck Carroll, who
Hmm.
has the exam room and who has broadcasting experience, right? So he flows so nicely and can conversate so easily. So that was really motivating. And then, of course, Dr. Yami. And I always say she was the first person, even though, she's a pediatrician. She works with children. I'm sorry, the distraction with our dog. So she works with children. And even though, I don't talk much about children or anything like that, I was interested in learning from her. There was another physician in Florida. And then, of course, you,
Oh, yeah, that guy named Dr. Zoo. Yeah, co-host. Yeah.
Dr. Zoo. And
Who's that
so
guy?
listening to you and really just listening to people that are like-minded is what's also motivating and keeps us going. And then plus I benefit as well because I get to learn about other people, other
Yeah.
experts as you host them.
Yeah, for sure. Especially it's you're getting double, triple that over when you're doing an interview show. So it's great fun. So let's
Mhm.
dive into the plant-based meat of it all, right? So going back into basics. So if one is curious, right, about starting a podcast, they don't have no idea, they have a blank piece of paper in front of them. What would you say would be the top three things to consider, when,
Mhm.
you are thinking about, hey, let me start my own show, what are the top three things to consider?
Mhm.
I think that, I mean, number one is, what do you want a podcast about? For me, that's, and are you passionate enough about it to make it, keep producing content about it? Because again, it's work. I think, in fact, it's more work than we knew it was going to be, as far as a commitment to put out regular content. So that's number one. I think the other thing you might need to decide is it going to be purely audio, or is it going to be audio and video?
Mhm.
So, putting the podcast out in audio format and then putting it out there maybe on YouTube as a possibility. Um, I, I don't, what do you think? What else do you think?
I like those two. And also the idea, at least for me, are you going to be interviewing in person, basically local people, or will this be, will you have like StreamYard interviews or Zoom interviews? Because that changes the dynamics of everything. If you're filming on location, maybe at your guest establishment, you'll have to move all your equipment. If you are filming in location or on location, but in your own studio, that makes
Mhm.
everything so much easier. And I love the idea of being in person, especially like I feed off of people's energy as well.
Mhm.
So I love that personal interaction, but that's not a possibility. Right? We're not doing that right now. So,
Yeah. So pre-COVID, I think most of our interviews were in person.
Mhm.
That was kind of the concept and the idea. Uh, uh, Post-COVID or during COVID, most of the interviews have been through some sort of streaming uh, programs or apps, and Zoom or StreamYard or something like that. The interesting thing about that is it has opened up a lot of a lot of possibilities. The world. I mean, now you don't. We never dreamed of the concept of interviewing somebody from Michigan, because we would never get to them or they would never get to us. And now you can interview a whole lot more people.
yes. I mean, I recall having this interview right before COVID. And as a matter of fact, I think I'm going to release just a portion of it because her business no longer exists. But I interviewed this woman in Madrid, Spain, who has, you know what tapas are, Dr. Zhu,
Yes.
where you can
Yes.
go hop around in the city and have little appetizer type
Yes.
foods.
Mhm.
And she created a whole vegan experience where she took her group around to have vegan tapas throughout Madrid, but also she partnered with El Prado, the museum,
Mm.
so that she can offer a vegan exhibit sort of experience. And this is all, I remember having such a fascinating conversation about, well, these are the possibilities. People need to know that we don't have to limit ourselves when it comes to, I know that this is about podcasting, but in terms of veganism.
But just like any type of interactive experience.
That's right. I interviewed another individual in England who also has a vegan travel experience that she offers. So there's so many things that I would have never had access to had we not done it by Zoom,
We
for
interviewed
example.
somebody from Tenerife in the Canary
Yes,
Islands.
that's
It's just like
right. Yes. So
all over now. So there's just these concepts that were foreign to
yeah,
us. So you never would have thought about it.
Yeah.
And this is at least this one good thing that's come out of it is that it's opened up our minds to the fact that it doesn't have to be an in-person interview.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know where my furthest interview has been. I think maybe Israel was probably my furthest interview.
wow.
It's or was it Lebanon? I forget.
Oh,
But anyway, so it's if it's in person or if it's remote, there's so many different possibilities, and the technology and the apps and the software has advanced so much that you could do almost everything, you know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? So
mhm.
it's I think it's a very low barrier to entry. You just
Yes.
have to, I think the only barrier to entry is really the creativity. It's really the imagination of, what you can, conceptualize and visualize your podcast to be. And then you're just like, okay, let's just do it. Let me find the correct resources. And I think the next topic is a nice segue is, the pros and cons of doing it yourself. Like, do you want an interview show, with another person? Do you want to have a co-host, or do you want to lead the podcast, by yourself? So, can you share, I know you guys operate for the most part as a duo, but, what has your experience been in terms of, those kinds of scenarios?
Right.
So yeah, I'll start this one and then she'll finish it. So yeah, I mean, there's pros and cons to everything, and I like the idea of the duo because it lends we come from different perspectives. So when we have a guest, we're thinking different directions. For example, I'm a little bit more technical, she's a little bit more social, and so she can talk about that experience of the tapas lady and creating the thing with the Prado Museum. I usually talk about something healthcare related or the science behind it, and so it lends different perspectives. So that's one of the advantages. The harder part is for at least for us is we have to both be available, and so that rate limiting step is me. Because I'm not always available, and when you're interviewing different people at different times from different places in the world, they're not always going to be available for Dr. Riz at 7 p.m. Dallas time, or on a weekend. And so, especially in the beginning, for the most part, we interviewed a lot together, but we have evolved. Just like our topics evolve, we have evolved to where now Maya does a lot of topics and a lot of interviews by herself because simply I'm not available.
Right.
And so we'll continue to evolve and roll with the punches, so to speak.
Right. I think, you see other podcasters that kind of partner up with someone. It's so exciting at the beginning because you imagine this future of working together, feeding off each other, having a lot of fun. And then life happens, like regular things that we face on a daily basis. Those things can interfere with the partnership. So the co-hosts working together. And so the advantage is that it's a lot of fun. You have two different perspectives that can ask different points of questions for the guests, and but you're always going to be relying on your co-hosts. Are they available? Are they not available? Can they
Yeah.
help edit? So there's that plus and minus on that. As an individual, what I like, the idea is that you have all creative rights. You don't have to ask for permission from anyone else in
Hmm.
terms of how you want to run the podcast. But at the same time, the entire burden is on you. So unless
Hmm.
you hire a team, all the editing, all the marketing, all the doing the research and preparing your guests is on you. You have absolutely no one to help you. The advantage that I have with Riz as a physician is that he understands a lot of the medical aspect to what we're talking about because of his background as a scientist, as a doctor. And he's very good when it comes to figures. He has a great memory, and just like he said, a very technical side that I may not necessarily foster or work with as much. So, but yeah, it's something definitely to consider. The other thing, I before I forget, I do want to add that there are podcasts that do not necessarily interview, right? So, for example, Riz and I could be a duo, work together, and never have a guest. We basically talk about everyday things or whatever it may be, which was an idea of mine initially, was for Riz to come home and just talk about a case, a difficult case that he
Mm-hmm.
faced. I think that that could add a lot of value to the audience, to our listeners. So
Yeah.
you don't always have to have a guest. If you have a lot to talk about, you know, we were recently listening to a podcast on true crime, and this woman does all the research and she just shares about, you know, a situation that happened, and it was still fascinating. So
Yeah.
that's another
Yeah.
dynamic.
Yeah. So, yeah. There's obviously, you know, we're speaking about, you know, us presenting nutrition and lifestyle things and interviewing people, but there obviously are all sorts of different types of podcasts that people can do.
Hmm.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, for me, like I've been interviewed by they're not even a couple. They're two different doctors. They're both osteopaths, and they actually are interviewing me remotely, and they're not actually in the physical same space. So I thought that was interesting, you know, as well. It does take some coordination and for them
Mhm.
to show up as well. But it's cool to, you know, if you don't even have a guest, it's nice to kind of go back and forth. Like you guys could, you know, if you guys weren't doing a health show, you could be totally doing something else. You know, you could be doing like fashion or, you know, the climate change or, you know, politics, you know, whatever,
That's right.
whatever, you know, would make for a great discussion. So yeah, so those are great ideas. So let's go to you know, platforms, apps, and equipment. There is obviously so much that we can talk about here, but you know, I would say just for starters, you know, how would you start if someone, you know, were to just had nothing, you know, maybe has some sort of budget, you know, we can probably kind of categorize it as in like, you know, low budget, middle budget, high budget, you know, we can, you know, if you want to start off with that.
Hmm.
Yeah, if I can start it,
Sure.
you know, I think that we just talked. You just said it. There's a very low barriers to entry, and you can start off very simply with a simple microphone, which is not too expensive. Some recording equipment, and some people use their iPhones. Some people use their cameras, and then a lot of the software that people use is free. You can use GarageBand on Apple. You can use iMovie on Apple and to edit video, GarageBand for audio. So you know, I tell people, I would tell people, don't invest a lot to start. Just you know, just start simply so you can kind of see how things work for you, and then expand from there. And that's kind of what we did. I mean, we weren't exactly low budget, but we started off simply, and then once we started to do more filming and more audio, Maya invested a lot of time and then into purchasing the correct equipment.
Hmm. And our first set, I want to say we went on Amazon. There's probably a lot of variety now, but you can go on Amazon and buy a complete set, which is the microphone and the stand, kind of like the arm and the stand, that plugs into, probably with a cable that goes into your computer, and so that you can use GarageBand, for example. You can buy it for like $50, and if it's just one person, that's all that you need, and that's really the only audio that you have control over, because if you're interviewing via Zoom, for example, you have no control over how your guest sounds. But I've always believed that the host should sound, at least have good quality sound. And then I do want to add that after this setup that we had, the initial one, we invested, I don't know, about $250 or so, I don't remember, in buying a set of lavalier mics. The reason for the lavaliers really were because we were recording your lectures, Riz, and he was doing a lot of public speaking at the time. But then we met Dr. Ermina Van Dyken, who I believe you might have already interviewed. She's in Maui. I don't know if you're
I'm not
familiar.
sure.
Okay.
No. Mm-mm.
And she was interviewing a lot of the people that were coming to or going to the vegetarian what is it called? The Vegetarian
Vegetarian
Society
Society
of Hawaii.
of Hawaii. Yeah.
Mhm.
So they would visit Oahu and Maui, which she's a surgeon, so she's at both locations, and she would sit down with Dr. Lori Marbus and you name it. She would sit with them on location, basically showing off Maui, and I mean, beautiful.
On the beach and in the forest, somewhere.
That's
So
right. That's right. We got to talk about Maui after
we
this.
have to talk about that.
I got interviewed in a forest and it was beautiful. It was just
You
gorgeous.
have
Yeah.
to connect with her when you go.
But I think
I will.
it was about the microphones.
I know.
Yeah.
See how I get off topic, but I connected with her.
That's why you have him, to keep you on top.
Right. I connected with her about a year before we actually met in person. We met on a sailing. We have an Instagram page for our sailing experience. And I don't know how it was that I reached out to her and realized she's in Maui, she's a sailor, and she's a surgeon, and she's married to someone who's very much into meditation and yoga.
And she's plant-based. Yeah.
And she's plant-based. And anyway, we met up with her. She said, I would love to interview you. So we sat down with her, and that was our experience with the lavalier mics and she gave us a few tips, and we love those. When we do walk with a dog, we carry the lavalier set so that we can record the short lecture that he gives. But anyway, I say all of that to say that if you don't want to travel with a lot of equipment, a lavalier set is a wonderful thing to carry around. Just with a small recorder, you don't have to spend a lot of money. It's just more about being very practical, making it easy on yourself. If it starts to become too difficult, you're not going to enjoy the whole process.
Yeah, especially for we're talking about how to start a podcast. So then that implies that the person is a beginner. That means that they're not an expert in audio and video recording theoretically. So again, my opinion is start simple. And then once you gain some experience and you learn more and you see what your needs are, then you can go out and spend some money.
Yes, I definitely echo that. I think starting simply makes a lot of sense. And then you can figure out, okay, it seems like my podcast is going in this direction, so I'm going to have to upgrade here and here and here. When I started with the Anchor app, and that was like a do-it-yourself free. And I did my audio editing on Audacity. I'm not affiliated with any of those, but those are just, what I started off with, and they were free as well. And I have zero audio engineering or sound engineering, experience. So I feel like if I could do it, anyone can do it. So, and there's a plethora.
I think Maya got some advice on iMovie from my daughter.
Yes. That was years ago, yes, because I film a lot and I love making family movies of our, when we're traveling and all that. And I remember, and that was a few years ago, but I had no idea how to use iMovie. And she sat with me and taught me this, taught me that. And recently she viewed one of my videos, and she said, "Wow, Maya, your editing has really improved." Okay, says the college girl. Like, I'm all embarrassed. Okay.
I wanna show a quick comment. This is from Plant-Based Tooth Doc. You guys know her. That's Dr. Ann Nguyen. She says Maui sounds amazing. So shout out to her.
It's one of our second homes. We have a few, but yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Ann. But she was such a pleasure. I was so excited that she was coming on because, as you know, Dr. Zhu, we don't know too many plant-based dentists. So we really loved getting to know her.
Yeah. She was on mine subsequently, and she's a gem. So she's great. Okay. So lavalier mics, getting back on topic, very cheap and inexpensive way to, to be able to record. And the smartphone technology is so good now. The camera I'm not an Android person. I'm more of an iPhone, so I'm not sure. But I know that Android, the Samsung phones, the Google phones have amazing camera. And I think Riz, you gave a really good point. I started my first 3 seasons on just audio. What I'm saying, and then this season became video. So it does make a huge difference on how you go about it, because on audio, I could be doing, other things, not like, cooking and driving and stuff like that while recording a podcast, but meaning like, I could, multitask, but whereas video, you have to give that,
Right.
that poker face, like Chris Cuomo, type of, death stare, while you're interviewing.
Yeah, and you have to comb your hair, you have to brush your teeth, you have to put some,
Oh, I don't have that
shirt
problem,
on,
so.
you have to put, you have to wear some clothes.
I can
So,
actually say, and I do agree, we've always been have always had video, and then we extract the audio for
Yep.
the audio platform, but it is definitely a little bit more stressful in the sense that you feel like you have to be ready to be, have to be presentable. And of course, you become a little bit self-conscious. Like myself, that I could flow easier if I weren't being recorded, like if the video were not an issue. But at the same time, it's like that's how we connect. You get to see each other smile and your expressions and all of that. So
Dr. Ann says hi.
hi.
Okay, so second to last question, in terms of contents, right? So this is going to differ whether you are, I guess, preparing material for a topic that you will talk about, or this could be applied for, script writing or interview questions, right? As you're about to interview your guests. How do you, how have, you gone over time in terms of, making that process up? Do you do a lot of heavy research on the, opposite person? Do you just wing it? Like, how did you, go about it? Because I think most of your shows are, you're either, interviewing someone, you're lecturing to an audience, so you're doing something more interactive with people. So how do you prepare for that topic or person?
Right. Well, I definitely do my research, and I usually always know when I want to interview someone, which Dr. Zoo next season. Oh, I don't go by seasons, but next year you're coming on the show. Please. But
Of course.
yes. So I usually know when I want to interview someone, and then it's important for me to know if they are available. Now, if they are available and I know I'm going to interview, then I invest a lot of time, which is I always, first thing I do, which is why I really want to convince people to start a podcast or create a presence on YouTube. Because as we know, Dr. Zoo, when you're really when you're studying a subject or want to learn more about an individual, you're either going to Google that individual or you're going to look them up on YouTube. And I'm surprised at how many people, shy away from being on YouTube. And by the way, it doesn't cost any money to create a channel on YouTube. And there are a lot of videos I can show you how to get started on YouTube. But so I try to listen to as many interviews or lectures or presentations that they may have on YouTube. If they have a book, I'll read as much as I can. I have had authors come on and they offer what is the editor's version or a PDF form of their book so that I can become familiar with their content. But it's absolutely important for me to know enough about my guests so that my questions reflect that. And then sometimes I'll run the questions by them and say, is there anything that you would like to add? But it's always kind of like the same style of, tell us about yourself, where you're from. Same thing like your origin question. And then, 3 points in terms of how they work with people, depending on their field. And then services, I always want to promote the work that they're doing. So how can people learn more about them and get in contact with them? Do you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I'm very fortunate to have her do all that research, and so I get a lot of information. You get to know your guest ahead of time, so that you can have an intelligent conversation and something that's directed and pointed to create good content for your audience. And so, yeah, Maya typically does come back with a list of questions. That list of questions is the kind of the script. It's and you can arrange them in a certain order, and that way you can kind of guide the conversation, and so that helps a lot. At the same time, I don't mind at all getting off topic, or and so you kind of have to be somewhat flexible, because if there's something that's interesting that you want to talk about and it wasn't necessarily in your quote script, you certainly want to go with it. But research is really important ahead of time. So very experienced guests will have their own they'll already have their bio. They might even have a page or a place that you can go to learn more about them. And that certainly makes it a lot easier.
I also now include, once they book with me, I include an intake form or intake page where individuals can then submit everything that I need, for example, a photo for the thumbnail, a short bio, all their links, so that I have everything ready when I'm promoting the episode. But yeah, it's a lot of work, and yet at the
Mm,
same
yeah.
time, I love it. So
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think for the both of us, we're more slanted in terms of an interview show. For me, I didn't even know podcast booking agents, were a thing until they ended up flooding my in my inbox, like, Dr. Zoo, do you want, here's this great guest, like, would you like them to be on the show? I'm like, what? Who are you? Where did you come from? um, and so it's nice for, in that regard, for the guest to appear, right? But like you said, Riz, is doing that homework is super important in terms of a guest, right? Like if they have a website, most people have social media now, right? And Maya, what you said about Googling them, whether they have something like LinkedIn or a YouTube channel, right? So there's it's almost like, unless you're a hermit in the woods, we can find you, and yeah, it's creating, good research, and I think that makes for a more easy flowing conversation, and and it'll be fun. So any before we close, do you have did you have anything to add to that, or?
Well, I did want to mention that our own podcast is going through some changes now.
Mhm.
And so by hopefully early 2022, we will have a new brand. And that's really as a result of us really narrowing down, like really focusing and on, I guess, rebranding to reflect what we are really about. And our dynamic in the last 3 years has been a lot of fun, but it's also been a little inconsistent. So Riz and I took like this business decision approach and said, okay, well, what I'm going to do is I'll be the sole host for the podcast under a new name, just myself. And then from time to time, Riz will join me to kind of make comments, help interview, or whatever it may be. The thing was
Yeah.
that I did not want to mislead new people as they come on, as listeners, thinking that the doctor is going to be available all the time, and then it's
Yeah.
just me. And I think also it takes a lot of pressure off Riz from
Yeah.
having to always feel like, wow, I'm working full time and I still have to do
I'll
this.
probably show up more often now.
He probably will show up more often. And so we would have to interview like in an evening, or sometimes he would take a Saturday and batch interview like 3 or 4 guests, which was still a lot of work for him because that's
Yeah.
his break time. And so uh, I say all of that to say that, this is a journey. Being a podcaster is an amazing journey. If you get a chance to go to a conference, which I have done, it's amazing because you come together with your peers who come from all over the world. But you feed off each other, you learn from each other, you can laugh about mistakes that you've made, and you will go through a lot of changes. It's a journey. You'll discover that maybe you didn't like it as much, or certain topics are not for you. And so give yourself, a chance to grow and to adapt, to make changes. It's okay if you decide that you want to change the name of your podcast. It's okay if your co-host can no longer be part of the show. And it's okay if you're not as consistent as you want to be. Of course, Dr. Zhu, you and I, we know that consistency is absolutely important, to have
Yeah.
at least one episode per week. But sometimes you can experience burnout as a result because it's very
Mhm.
demanding, especially if you're the one doing the research and all the editing and all the promotion. I mean, it can be a
It
lot.
could,
So,
yeah, it could easily be its own full-time job.
right,
So,
Yeah.
and we
exactly.
didn't even go into editing.
Right. So I might point out that, a trick for new people is that it seems that a live episode is a little bit less work, in the sense that, you just do it, it's live, you put it up there, and you don't have to do all this post production work with the sound and the video.
Mhm.
So I've seen actually some people I follow who have gone to, they were doing 4 episodes a month, and now they're doing 2 lives and 2 episodes because they needed to tone it down a little bit. And like Maya said, I was going to remind her if she didn't say it that burnout is a real thing. And then you kind of you're not doing the thing that you were passionate about because you got burned out about it because you were overdoing it.
Yes.
Exactly.
Very
Exactly.
true.
Yeah. So, a personal example, for me was, shifting into video for YouTube this season. I just wanted to, accommodate as many people as possible. So, like I said, humbly speaking, I've been flooded with a lot of guests, requests. And so I said, okay, I want to do my best to accommodate. But what ends up happening is that if you don't have your own team, like, we didn't even talk about editing. Like, I do the audio editing, I do the video editing. And, I had zero experience, And so, like, that can accumulate, over time. And so I said to myself, okay, I'm just going to shift back to once a week for the next season, So, like you said, Maya, and how we've been doing it, in the pandemic is it's all about pivoting, So if something doesn't work for you, like, why would you want to go towards that burnout? And it's all about, what works for you at the end of the day, because there's a whole reason why we got started, right? It is a lot of work, but, if we can hold on to the flame and the passion of why we got started to begin with, then we kind of have to shift things to kind of rebalance that. And I love that you bring that up, because burnout can happen, in almost every industry, even in podcasting. So.
I think I want to say almost in podcasting, because when I've done my research for the genre that we're part of on different platforms like Apple and some other ones, when I'm researching to see how many people talk about plant-based nutrition or are related, podcasts related to that topic, there are a lot of people they gave up last year. There are many podcasts that only had, say, 1 episode or maybe 10, and they stopped, and they just never informed their listeners. They just gave up. Adam has a name for that, but I forgot what it's called, but it's when a podcast just dies. And so I don't want to be that person. I feel like I've made this commitment. I enjoy it as well, and
Right.
I'm growing as a result, and I love the connections. And so I had to, I took a break. I decided to hire a team, just because now I have it's just so much work. I don't even think I need to say that anymore about that. But, with a puppy in our lives. And when I hired this individual, what was so important to me was when he said, now, wouldn't you like to just let go of all that work so that you can actually focus on the lifestyle that you preach about? I said, oh, wait a minute. Yeah. Yes, I've been so consumed. I mean, I would sit for long periods, one day here, one day there, of just editing, and all the other work that is involved. And I'm
Yeah.
not enjoying life
You
anymore.
burn out. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm burned out.
I was literally, just interviewed by another group about lifestyle medicine. And, you, Maya, you, Dr. Riz, like, fully know that self-care is a huge thing. And what I love about talking about lifestyle medicine, it's a really interesting, very, very great specialty where a lot of role modeling needs to come into play. You kind of
Mhm.
have to, walk the talk, practice what you preach. And so, in a weird way, that also happens, while podcasting, right? You can just, be in the weeds, editing this and fine tuning this. And, I used to, when I was audio editing, I was like, oh, there's a little static here, I gotta take this out here. And, I used to nitpick so much, and I'm just like, oh, there was a car crash, I just leave it in there.
Yeah, you noticed
Oh,
I was going to point out the dog was digging on the couch here earlier in the episode. We're gonna have to edit that one out, huh? Or just leave it.
Yeah. But you know what? But I think a lot of people were just so used to being in a virtual world and doing the distance nowadays. And, there's so many technicalities and, glitches and stuff. People are just used to it. And so I just kind of, for me, I forgave myself. I'm like, why am I
right.
beating myself up so much about the detail? Like, you can be so type A in medicine, do I have to be type A in podcasting too? So.
Yeah, right.
I will say, because I wanted to mention, I don't know if we have enough time, but I remember when I said location is absolutely important, and when I was filming in person, um, So we had some situations where we were not prepared. I remember we were in San Diego. The physician invited us to his facility. So we go and we set up there. We're having a conversation, and then you hear the plane. "Rrrr." Like, I can't, one plane after another plane.
Turns out
I
he's in the
could,
flight path for San Diego Airport.
at the same time, he shares a wall with a gym. So you could hear the basketball being thrown, right up
Oh my
against the wall.
God.
It was just another time the individual didn't close her shop for that was like our second episode that I mentioned, and she kept attending to customers, so we would have to stop. You could hear the ringing of the bell coming in. There have been so many things that have happened. Another time I was in here at our property, we have a little cafe. I thought, oh, nice and quiet when we go there. It shouldn't be a problem. Well, I'm sitting with my guests, and right behind us, you could hear these guys just coming in with like buckets or ice chests and putting buckets of ice in the ice chest the whole time. Like I'm panicking, like, what am I going to do? But these are the kind of things that you have to be prepared for and really think about if you are going to film in the same space with your guests. Can you
Yeah.
find a quiet area? That can be very, very tricky.
Yeah, yeah. And it
Yeah,
goes back to pivoting. So, it's
right.
whatever, you just whatever works at the end of the day. So,
Mhm.
so I think we're going to conclude here, and I think we can talk more, more and more about this. It's a very fun topic. Do you have any last minute, last thoughts or recommendations for beginners out there?
Well, so it brings me back to what I said earlier, is because Maya reminded me of something. Start simple. Don't spend a lot of money on things. And because she just reminded me that many people don't go beyond that first episode. They do it and then they find it's not for them, or they might do 5 or 6 or 7 episodes and then quit. I think you'd really be upset if you'd invested thousands of dollars in equipment before you found out whether this was the lifestyle for you, a podcasting lifestyle. Um, that would be, one thing that again came across my mind.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
the other thing is, we haven't gotten really specific, but for example, and Maya does all the post production work, so I'll ask both of you, so the audience can know. Colin, how much time on a typical episode did you do put in afterwards? It's not just the
Yeah.
4 or 5 hours of research ahead of time and then the actual interview, but how much time did you put in afterwards
Yeah,
to make one
so
episode?
so if you were to ask me like in the beginning, per episode, it could be like the entire episode, which included, scheduling the interview. I'll tell it to you like this: scheduling the interview, finding and scheduling the interview, to creating artwork, right? To creating the topic and the interview questions, to recording, and then with post production, and that includes interviewing them. That'll probably per episode, it was on average maybe like 5 hours
And,
per
and don't
episode.
and don't forget marketing. If
Yeah,
unless
and
that's
that's not
Social
even
media. Yeah.
marketing. Yeah, that's not even
Mhm.
marketing. And then I just, since then I had to streamline it. So and even then it still takes me like still an hour. I got it down to like hour, maybe like 90 minutes, but on a good day, an hour. So
So what do you do? Like squeeze it in your lunch break while being a doctor, take care of some patients, then squeeze a little bit in,
yeah, yeah,
stuff.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean,
And
yeah,
then
no,
Maya, yeah,
no, go ahead.
and then of course from the beginning, Maya's done audio and video. So
Mhm.
how long
Mhm.
would it take you to do an episode?
I used
All
to
the work.
say it would take me about 8 to 10 hours because I do the video. And then that's uploading and sharing also to Facebook groups. And because you want people to watch the video.
Yeah.
So then I'm using both platforms. That's been a lot of work, but I too have gotten it down. I'm faster. With confidence, with practice, with experience, you get better and you learn not to, I don't know, maybe what I'm learning to be is a little bit more myself. Like that's the ultimate goal is to feel
Mm,
confident in who I am and to be okay. Not to be so prepared and so professional because I
mhm.
I tend to be a little bit like that. And I don't want to come off as being uptight. I want to come off as who I really am, which is I love, getting to know people.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Actually, a quick question I came up with is, how much does feedback from your audience make or break, you know, the overall theme of, your podcasting and per episode? How much does that influence?
I guess initially, like when I first knew I would, I'm going to have a particular expert on the show, I would ask my Facebook group, what questions do you have for this individual? For example, this
Mm,
particular physician. That was really important for me because then I could go back to that expert and say, well, my audience would like to know this and that. So I love that interaction.
mhm,
Um, and when it comes to feedback, whoa, that just does so much for me. It
mhm.
tells me I'm on the right path if I'm getting positive feedback. I can't say that I've gotten anything negative, but maybe people just don't say anything.
I
But
think I think the negative feedback is that they just don't come back and watch your next episode, and that they're no longer
That's
a
true.
subscriber.
That's true.
So you may never get that.
Yeah.
It might be a good thing to actually poll your audience from time to time and say,
yeah.
help us get better. What can we do to be better?
Polling.
And
Polling is key. It's so
yeah,
key.
Yeah. I
Um,
started to do that with my rebrand on my Facebook group. I want people, so I had them help me with the title, and then
yeah.
I'm going to move on to artwork and then other things so that they can help me shape the podcast.
Yeah, yeah. Because at the end of the day, it's for them, right? So,
Hmm.
it's kind of like a two-way street. You're having a relationship, us being hosts, and then the other person being, the consumer, that's listening, to, your podcast. Guys, this has been great. Thank you so much. I know we can go on and on. Last but not least question, how do people find you? People wanted to learn more about what you do, and wanted to reach out. How do people find you?
So our website, Plant-Based DFW, everything is on there when it comes to our podcast and anything that's coming up. I have a little cooking show that I do from time to time. I list that on there as well. And if Dr. Riz has anything coming up, I'll put that on the website as well, along with other resources that we offer. So plantbaseddfw.com.
Awesome. Well, guys, it's been a pleasure. It's always good to see you guys, and I want to wish you the much success for the rebranding and pivoting and all this great stuff that we're doing, even in podcasting as we're pivoting through the pandemic. So,
That's right.
guys, this has been another episode of Thrive Bites. If you like this, please like, comment, and subscribe. And if you feel that this is a benefit for someone else, please let them know as well. And until then, please say goodbye to Maya and Dr. Riz.
thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye. Guys, thank you so much for watching that episode. We hope you enjoy it. And please remember to like and subscribe down below so you can get continuous updates for future episodes and future guests. And we can't wait for this upcoming season. So don't forget to like and subscribe.